explore how digital platforms influence demand patterns and price discovery. It will assess how tourism can create local employment without cultural commodification. It will also reflect on how policy frameworks can incentivize responsible development rather than volume driven growth. So, we have our panelist, Nikhil Sharma, Managing Director and COO South Asia, Radisson Hotel Group. Mr. Santosh Kumar, Country Manager, India, Sri Lanka and Maldives, Booking.com. And Mr. Gaurav Bhatnagar, Regional Vice Chair, WTTC India. And to moderate the session, we have Ms. Jyoti Mayal, Chairperson, Tourism and Hospitality Skill Council. Ms. Jyoti Mayal?
Okay. I'll sit there, but I like to open for now.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll just open the
Okay, sure.
and then I'll move on. That's so much better. Yeah, so great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here and amongst whoever is here to hear us. So I think, anyway, I'm sure they'll carry it more forward because I think tourism is a very important aspect of our lives and everything revolves around tourism. There's nothing called sustainability separate and there's nothing about wellness separate and there's nothing about the industry separate, there's nothing about eco separate. I think everything is evolving together. So I'll just once again wish you all a very good afternoon. It's my privilege to be welcome you to the ET Now Global Business Summit 2026 here at the Taj Palace, New Delhi. So India stands at the tourism crossroads. This question is not about how fast we grow. It is how responsible we grow. So our session today, which we just heard, is about regenerative routes to India's global tourism leadership. It comes at a very pivotal moment. Tourism is one of India's most dynamic sectors, a true engine of growth, cultural exchange, and global visibility. Let me share a few numbers that highlight the scale of this opportunity before I get into a discussion with this awesome leadership sitting here on front of you. In 2025, India recorded 2.51 billion domestic tourist visits and welcomed nearly 18.9 million international arrivals, making it the 18th most visited country in the world. Tourism contributes significantly to our economy, with India holding a 1.5% share of global tourism. Between our states, I think Uttar Pradesh, and when we were talking about wellness with ET Now, leads the domestic tourism. UP leads the domestic tourism, while international arrivals are still steadily recovering post-pandemic, with the rise of spiritual, cultural, and wellness destinations driving demand. These figures remind us that India is not only a vast market, but also a global contender. Yet, as we aim for a $3 trillion tourism economy by 2047, we must ask, how do we grow responsibly? How do we ensure that our ecosystems, heritage, and communities thrive along this growth? That's the essence of today's discussion, and tourism can no longer be measured only in numbers. I believe it must be regenerative, inclusive, and resilient. And saying that, we are going to open the floor for discussions, and we'll make it interactive as much as we can, and we'd love the audience to join in also whenever they would love to. We are open to that, and let's take that forward because, as I said, tourism needs to be built together. No one person can do this in this world. Thank you. Face a little bit that side, so that I can see. So thank you once again, speakers. I think it's wonderful seeing you all here. Actually, projecting three different aspects. Sorry, one is missing, but anyway, three different aspects. So we have travel, and we have WTTC here. We have Santosh, who's the Booking.com, a totally a B2C platform, though of course B2Bs use it also. And then we have Nikhil, who's here from the hospitality side, and who doesn't know him? He's got tons of hotels running all over. So I think that's a huge thing. So I've divided the whole thing into four in the topics that we are supposed to be discussing. The first one I'm focusing is towards regenerative sustainability because that's the main topic given to us. But we will diversify a bit from that because everything cannot be sustainable, and that's what I need to ask you all also. That really, do you believe in sustainability only, or do you believe more in luxury? So going forward, I think I'll start with Santosh. He's sitting right in the center. So Santosh, if you could just enlighten the audience here that how is traveler demand in India evolving towards sustainability? And how can platforms like booking.com translate intent into measurable outcomes at destinations? Because everyone sitting here, I'm sure at some time or the other, they indulge in booking.com. So how can you drive that?
Sure, happy to take a stab at it. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here and be a part of this conversation. Look, I think it's important to set the context a little bit before we go deeper into the conversation, right? Let's distinguish a little bit sustainability from regenerative tourism, because sustainability is really about leaving no trace when we travel, right? But regenerative tourism is leaving a place better than you found it. Right? So I think we have to make that very important distinction between the two. And I think when I think about whether it is sustainability or whether it is regenerative tourism altogether, I genuinely believe India is very uniquely positioned given a lot of our historical tourism strengths that we have, right? Whether it is in the areas of Ayurveda, whether it is in the areas of yoga, heritage tourism, all of that, they're all inherently restorative and nature-based. So therefore, they align very well with the general spirit of responsible tourism, right? Now, when it comes to sort of traveler demand, let's again set the context a little bit. Because today there is a little bit of intent versus reality gap that there exists when it comes to responsible tourism, right? Because we tend to run a lot of surveys. In fact, we run a global sustainability survey every year with thousands of travelers all over the world. India is always a part of these surveys. And some of the numbers, actually, I need to refer to my notes because these are important numbers, right? Again, this is all intent. 87% of Indian travelers have told us they're willing to travel sustainably. 3 in 5 Indian travelers, 63%, want to leave places better than when they arrived. Half of Indian travelers plan to use greener transport, aim to reduce waste while traveling, and focus on conserving energy on trips. Right? So obviously there is a lot of intent. Nobody doubts the intent. But there is still a say-do gap today that exists, right? Because, while travelers might have the intent to be sustainable, they don't always have the tools at hand to measure, the actions of their behavior, right? Today also discoverability is a big problem. Even when it comes to sustainable, attractions or sustainable hotels or accommodations in general, discoverability is a problem, right? So, and also at the end of the day, when it comes to the actual conversion, a lot of times travelers will still choose price and quality over a sustainable option, at the booking page. So therefore, we have to recognize that there is a gap between that intent and action, right? Now, what do we do as providers, right? Which is where we kind of come in as platforms, is, we are addressing it in 2 or 3 different ways. One is the whole awareness piece. Because I think it's still important for us to continue to drive a lot of awareness and keep it top of mind, continue to keep it top of mind. Awareness is there, but it's not necessarily always top of mind when somebody is, discovering new places, new destinations, or actually going ahead with their bookings, right? So for us as platforms, that discoverability piece, in terms of making sure that we are nudging travelers to find these options easily on our platform becomes very important. So one of the ways we are doing that is by using travel sustainable badges, right? Because at the end of the day, there's still a lot of jargon when it comes to sustainability. And as a traveler, we've got to make it easy for people, in terms of the language we're using on the platform. We need to make the journey of finding these options really easy. Like for example, on our platform, you can find sustainable options in as little as 2 clicks, right? And especially now with AI, it's becoming even easier in order to surface some of these options. So that discoverability piece is super important. Second thing, what we're doing is we are integrating with a lot of, we are helping like partners, like for example, the Radisson, who's here on this panel as well. If they have, let's say, certifications with certain third parties, it could be the GSTC, it could be LEED certification, it could be XYZ, right? We have about 60 certifications globally today. And anytime an accommodation partner has any of those certifications, we display that and we allow partners to be able to, not just prominently show those certifications, but also have some additional features built into it in terms of how are they actually meeting some of those certifications, right? Whether it could be in areas of, waste water management, it could be reducing greenhouse gases, it could be interacting with local communities. So there are multiple criteria that are involved. So that's another way we are trying to tackle it. Another sort of interesting feature where you can nudge travelers is, for example, a lot of platforms like even, for example, Google Flights. If you use Google Flights, you will see the carbon emissions, right, next to the flight prices. So that tends to act as a psychological nudge a lot of times to travelers. I'm sure here a lot of us use Uber as well. Now Uber, I think has also done a really good job of it. Now you've got the, I think it's called Uber Green. Right? So Uber Green is, and a lot of times I see that Uber Green is on par, and sometimes maybe even cheaper than getting a regular taxi, right? So these kind of nudges really help in terms of, helping that last mile conversion that is happening, right? I think the other way is, and I don't think we've reached there yet, is incentivization. Incentivization in terms of this could be integration into loyalty programs. It could be integration into, other sort of during the stay sort of experiences that travelers are having where you're nudging them to be more responsible in their actions, right? It's a little bit like how, the great example that always comes to mind is, again, in the aviation space, right? Because I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, we all used to print boarding passes, right? How did the airlines really incentivize flyers to get more sustainable and go digital is by saying, every time if you choose to skip printing the boarding pass, you would get 100 frequent flyer miles, right? So, I mean, that is a very simple but very powerful example of how they brought about that shift, right? So I think the incentivization piece is another one in terms of how this can also occur. I think there we are still scratching the surface, honestly, as platforms and in general as marketplaces in terms of how do we bring about that behavior. So that's probably overall how I would look at this.
I think there is a huge gap between sustainability, what you just said, between regenerative and then being responsible. And incentivize, I don't know why we need to be incentivized. Because I think the planet belongs to us and we all need to indulge in it. So incentivization should not be the path that we should be all taking about. But let's hear from the hospitality side. Nikhil, if you could tell me, how can large hotel chains embed regenerative practices at scale, beyond boutique hotels, of course, and resorts, while still delivering luxury experiences? Because we just touched on that there is a difference between luxury and being regenerative or sustainable. So, Nikhil, can I hear you say that?
Sure. Thank you, Jyoti. Just a little bit more on sustainability. And I want to allude to what Santosh said. I think it's extremely important to understand the DNA of our country. The DNA of this country has always been sustainable, right? You can go back to Chipko movement. You can go back to the way art and architecture and houses were built and how commercially, initially, part of this country was built. Right? It always was connected to the earth. So from a DNA perspective, I think India has always been there. Today, of course, I think Baltics leads it from a policy perspective and from awareness perspective. While I agree with Santosh that the travelers are conscious and aware, but they're not willing to pay a higher price today from that perspective. So that's a gap that we need to recognize and we keep educating. There are multiple factors for hotels, and I'll start with the construction phase. Of course, there are, like he said, classifications like LEED, hotel sustainability basics, and so on and so forth to make sure that hotels are built sustainably, because the carbon footprint of a hotel is fairly high, like airlines, and we need to be conscious of that. And not only from an architecture perspective, from heat, light, and power perspective, of course, going solar, getting into let me just say, windmill technology, for example, which is still nascent, and you see south of India leading the country rather than other parts of the country, right? So getting access to that in west, in north, in East India is extremely important for a country of our size. The other thing I'd like to say is that for it to happen at scale, it is not about luxury. So Radisson actually, again, Baltics has led that. We have 2 hotels that are completely net zero hotels, carbon hotels. And this year we go to 12 hotels, again in Europe. In India, while we try to do it, there are some policy where some states allow it, some states don't allow it, and that's where we are. You see China, for example, which is so EV. If you go to Shanghai today, and the number of EVs that you see, that city has gone silent. So for those who've been to Shanghai 10 years ago and go to Shanghai today, that city is a silent city. You don't hear horns, you don't hear cars, you don't hear scooters. Now, that's a policy change that the government enabled, but of course, people did follow, right? So those are the things that behavior changes need to happen. Hotels, from that perspective, become enablers. We do what we do best. In this country, we've been an economy that has been scarcity-led and is becoming an abundance-led economy, but the DNA hasn't changed. So I'll give you a small example. We, last year, played with a tool called Winnow. Now that tool in Europe is used for waste management, right? And it gives you an accuracy of how much waste is actually happening in your kitchens. And after us doing the pilot in our hotels, we realized that waste management in this country is far more efficient and far more better utilized than some of our hotels in Europe. So actually, do we need that tool? We don't need the tool because we are far more efficient already. So whether it's waste management, whether it's just heat, light, and power, or whether it's just the architecture, all these elements for hotels are extremely important, and that's the direction we are moving in. And of course, to your point, it's not luxury, it's not boutique, it has to happen at scale, and that's where we are going.
Thank you, Nikhil. I'd just like to add on and ask you on this continuity, because we haven't touched on community. So when are you building hotels, do you look at the community? Because recently Santosh and me were in Hong Kong and addressing on panels, and we saw that there was a huge focus on community uplift when they came to sustainability and regenerative. So, I have not heard that here in India so much when the hotels are building the properties. Are they looking at the villages, the cities and all for the community rise there, and are they actually associating with them and building that community?
So Jyotiji, it's a great question firstly, and let me tell you, and this is something that makes me proud as an Indian, because we are going into tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 cities, as an example, I am seeing reverse migration happening. I'm seeing senior team members wanting to come back to their hometowns at even at a lower pay hike or salary structure because they're closer to their families. So that is the first thing. The second thing that's happening is, because there's always a demand-supply situation in this country as far as hotels are concerned, when more and more hotels are opening, so for example, a Bareilly or a Siliguri, or I'll talk about a little bit about Kashmir because I think that's important, you see the local employability going up. And that is a big plus. On communities, we operate 7 hotels in the valley, in Kashmir. And I can tell you the way the local communities have had not only upliftment, I wouldn't call it scaling, I would call it impact, that is leading to employment, and that is leading to upliftment of families. So 20,000 rupees would actually be equal to 3 lakh rupees for a family in uplifting that family. So those are the small pieces that touch points. And of course, with you at the helm of THSC, there's a lot more to talk about it. We'll probably talk about it in another segue. But communities, and you see that even in Himachal and Uttarakhand, if I can say, you're seeing the communities coming together. And if I can say, those 2 states can become examples of what we see from over-tourism to right tourism. And those 2 states can really lead the way for us. But of course, the community, the tourists, and the operators all need to come together for that.
Without that, nothing can happen, because we need to chipko with each other as the chipko movement and really get working together. So Gaurav, coming to you, and I think you also are very involved in WTTC, which is a policy making platform, and I would say I think that's very much the need of the hour, because like Nikhil just said, that we need to get all together and the policies need to be driven. So what single policy lever would actually accelerate India's shift towards regenerative tourism? Would it be taxation, subsidies, or regulation? And of course, we need to strengthen the inbound and outbound, because that's your core business. So how would you be able to do that? Could you share some light on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think WTTC has a big focus on sustainability and regenerative tourism. And I think the conversation is far more advanced if you go to Europe or North America. When it comes to India, I think we have to first look at what's the business case for sustainability and regenerative tourism, because this will require heavy capital expenditure. And unless there is a business case for it, it doesn't work. Now, one advantage we have is that in terms of building our tourism infrastructure, we're still nascent, right? Our tourism as a percentage of GDP sits at about between 5 and 7%. Advanced economies like Spain are sitting at 12 or 13%. So we have a long way to go. And one advantage is that when you start from scratch today, so as we start building our new destination and new infrastructure, we can leapfrog, just like what we did with the mobile revolution, right? We just leapfrogged over building out the wired infrastructure and said, they're too late for wired now, so let's just go wireless. And I think we have that advantage today that when we start looking at investments in this country for tourism, if we start from the ground up building around sustainability and regenerative, it is much more cost effective and it is much more scalable. Because the challenge that countries like Spain or Italy are facing today is that they're sitting on infrastructure which has already been there for decades. And now when you start looking at it and saying that how do we set it up so that it doesn't become overcrowded and how do we set it up that it remains sustainable, it's a much more expensive problem to solve. So one thing that we definitely look at, the WTTC view on this and the TBO view on this is that we need to incentivize capital investment into the country on tourism. Now, there are three ways of doing it, like you talked about, right? You can regulate it. The general view on regulation is, businesses already feel over-regulated, right? There's always this concern around ease of doing business, and you add one more regulation. The first view, especially when you talk of, global players, is that let's pull out, right? If it's regulated, I don't want to do it. So I am personally not in favor of over-regulation. Subsidies are also good, but subsidies are hard to plan for, because what the problem with subsidies is that they're always conditional, right? Like the PLI that happens for export. Now, when you're doing a capex case and there is a subsidy that's going to be available, but the conditions are something that may happen or not happen in the future, the business cases become complicated. So my view is that, if we were to go aggressively giving tax breaks, it is the easiest and the most effective way of attracting capital. Now, tax breaks could be in the form of just tax holidays on building out infrastructure and income that you generate on infrastructure which is sustainable, which drives inbound tourism and which drives regenerative tourism. And this has worked well in the past. There was a huge tax break on export-oriented income from IT and software at the turn of the century. And that really gave rise to the whole IT industry. So these are bold moves because they always lead to revenue loss for the government. But in the long run, I think they attract massive investment. So tax holidays, GST reduction or even, waiving of GST, because, and we talked about it, right? It is a pricing problem. If I would prefer to, choose the sustainable option, but if it is 10 or 20% more expensive, I would rather not, right? So if we can, GST is a significant component in hospitality, and if that was not there, it would make it price competitive, even though it may be revenue neutral for the business, but it does make it price competitive. So my own view on this is that if you were to look at an aggressive policy around tax breaks for capex into the country for sustainable tourism, it will go a long way. On your other point on driving inbound tourism into the country, I think we have a very delicate balance to maintain. Over tourism is a real problem. Even in this country, while we attract 1% of our overall tourism is inbound, right? 18 million to 2.5 billion, less than 1%. But we know over tourism is a problem because we are very, very concentrated in pockets, right? It is either a Goa or a Kerala or the hills or the Golden Triangle. So the way I think we can leverage both the positioning and branding around sustainability and regenerative tourism is by making sure that we are attracting inbound tourism from high yielding tourists. Now, if you see the view, and I'm sure Santosh's surveys show this, there's far more propensity to pay a little bit more in the West right now, right? Europeans are very conscious about it, and Americans are very conscious about, yeah, I will pay the 10 or 20% more because I know, I'm contributing to the environment. So if you were to really start positioning India as a sustainable destination, right, where regenerative tourism and sustainability is at the heart of your experience in the country, and which is very possible, because Nikhil also talked about, right, it's in our DNA, right? The basic ethos of this country is around sustainability. Right, so if you were to really build the branding of Incredible India around the fact that sustainable tourism is how we have lived for thousands of years, it also starts attracting the right kind of tourists, right? It's not about how many millions of tourists we are bringing in. We need high-yielding tourists, right, who will spend the money over here, right? So it may be 1/10 the tourists that, say, go to Spain, but if they're spending 5 or 10 times more money over here, that's really what is sustainable for us. So that's the way I would think of it.
Thank you, Gaurav. And I think in some words we've actually spoken in one voice, saying that we need to be incentivized. It could be in taxation form or it could be any other form. And that's in our DNA, that we like the structure to be the same. But let's just bring the audience here and ask also this question to them. How would you, one of you can just put in this, that would you be willing to go for luxury instead of sustainability, or would you still choose sustainability in front of luxury or cost effectiveness? Let's just ask this quickly to one person. Any one person can answer. Would you want it to be cheaper, more luxurious? If that's what you're getting, on the other hand, you're getting something sustainable. What is your choice that would be? And it's not a right or a wrong answer, because everyone, like we said, we are a very cost sensitive country.
Jyoti, the idea is people are moving towards luxury.
Yeah.
Because if it's at a cheaper cost, believe me, sustainability takes a backseat.
It does.
There is a reason for that. Someone told to
Yeah.
ask a question. India today is not understanding sustainability. So luxury will always be their first priority. The moment you get a lower cost.
Right. So that says it all for all other.
It doesn't have to be an either and or, right? Luxury can
So,
come with sustainable
yeah.
options as well.
Yeah.
No, I just want to say that it's not an either or question at times, because sustainability can be built around luxury as well.
Yeah, so that's all where we all have to get together to do it also, right?
absolutely.
So that's what I say. So, travelers today, like I always say, want sustainability and experiences, but then they immediately want to put it on Instagram too. So I think that's where we all are, and that's what Indians are all about. So thank you for the first round of the regenerative sustainability, and that sets the foundation for our next questions. So let's now explore how hospitality and India's inbound and outbound, all three of us are here, flows can actually operationalize these principles, So let's move to the next round, which we are going to be talking about hospitality and inbound and outbound. So I'll start with Nikhil this time. Nikhil, you're right at the corner. So what innovations in hotels can balance wellness and luxury with sustainability, ensuring India remains attractive to global travelers seeking experiential stays, what we were just discussing. So can it be combined together, and how do we really foray that?
Firstly, I think Gaurav summed it up well, right? You need, and just on tourism and in your or hospitality, I want to say that India today is a net exporter of tourism and not so much of an importer, right? So we need to be conscious of the fact that while we are talking a little bit about inbound and wellness, and that can be a peg for us and has been a peg for us, along with mindfulness, because you see a lot of travelers today coming to India for meditation, right, as a niche, or the Buddhist circuit, right? Now these are circuits that are extremely important and go beyond the yoga per se. And those are pegs that we need to make sure that we speak about along with sustainability, because that's what we are known for. We are known for religious tourism. Which country do you have that has this kind of depth and breadth where travelers can actually come and experience, right? So it's important for domestic tourism, and I want to stick to that fact. Also, I do believe that it's important to ensure that we educate Indians that are traveling abroad on a lot of aspects. Because at the end of the day, the image of India is by the tourists that are visiting those countries, right? And when you go to the other countries, you hear that Indians are loud, Indians leave food on the floor, their rooms are dirty. Now, those are small elements. While we are conscious about it, as an image of India, that's extremely important that we need to also carry.
Thanks, Nikhil. But don't you think that even we Indians are the best when we are on traveling in countries like Singapore and all? We don't even litter there.
No,
You know,
absolutely.
so we come back and bring all our paper bags here and put them here. We come
Absolutely.
bring the bag full of litter and actually throw them on the roads here. But yes, it's very right that the Indians need to change and they need to change more. So coming back to you, Gaurav, we've already spoken about inbound, outbound, and your question, as you know, was about how can India strengthen inbound and outbound, but we've already touched it. So let me take this a step further without promptu and impromptu and say how we can. I would be asking this question later on, but I need to move forward and also ask you that how can we really skill develop all this, because coming from a background, right now being the current chairperson of Tourism and Hospitality Skill Council, I think how can we really take this forward and skill the community, outskill the people to give you a better results where inbound, outbound is concerned in the format of regenerative and sustainability?
I think that's a great question. And one thing we don't realize, and that's a fact and the stat that WTTC can't stop emphasizing, 10% of world's jobs are in tourism and hospitality, right? That's 1 out of 10 jobs in this world is tourism and hospitality. This is also a segment which is very people-centric. It is unlikely to get massively disrupted by AI because it is human-to-human connection, right? We are not traveling to a different part of the world to talk to a robot. So it is an AI-proof industry, and it will be great if the governments start to realize this, because we do need to massively invest into skill development when it comes to tourism. The good news is it is a very learnable skill set, right? It's not a technical skill set per se. So the skill set of, how do you build out small businesses and small enterprises which can service tourism, because tourism is fundamentally driven by small businesses globally, right? So how do you build out small businesses? How do you be more hospitable? How do you create ecosystems and licensing which allows to create trust, right? These are very simple things, but they do require massive investment. They also require investment from a perspective of that we need to be very international in our approach over it. We have to acknowledge that most of the tourists that come into this country definitely don't speak our native languages. Majority of them will also not speak English, right? And do we actively work around building language as a core skill? It is incredible that when you travel to mature tourism markets, the ability to find a Chinese-speaking guide or a Japanese-speaking guide or an Italian-speaking guide or a Hebrew-speaking guide is incredible, right? You will get them by the dozens. We lack that. We lack that immensely. I think Nikhil can probably talk a little bit more about it, but hotels, struggle finding people who are skilled in the hospitality industry, right? So I think it requires a long-term view. It requires probably a 10, 15-year view. It is no different from thinking of how do we build more AI skill set in this country. You need to have the right educational institutions in place. You need to have right funding in place. And you need to create right ecosystems which allow people to find jobs once they have been trained. And I think the same needs to happen for tourism as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'll take this forward to Santosh, and I'll say how can platforms like yours support hospitality providers? Because Nikhil is right here, so let's focus it on hospitality itself, becoming more sustainable and competitive internationally, but keeping in mind that we talk about sustainability and regeneration aspects of tourism.
I think the short answer I would have is we can't do this in isolation. None of us can solve this independently. We all have to come together, right? And what I mean by that is public-private partnerships are absolutely important. If we need to think about everything that Gaurav just said, right? If we need to solve it from a long-term perspective, we really need to continue to have that vision. And this is where I appreciate when I look at the recent union budget that was announced. There were a couple of announcements there related to travel and hospitality, which were interesting, right? One was the guides. I think 10,000 guides were going to be trained, which is great news. I know Jyoti ji, again, right up your alley. And then the other one was around the eco trails, right? Development of eco trails and looking at, the entire infrastructure around it. What would be great to see is how does this continue to relate back to all of the previous announcements that the government has made. Like for example, last year there was a focus on, I think it was 50 destinations across the country, right? It's down to 12, but still, right? The idea is continuity is very, very important, right? You've got to be able to link all of these initiatives together because you can't just announce it in isolation and then forget about it. Because again, if we're trying to look at destination management from a long-term perspective, all of these things are important, right? And vision is, like, let's look at what's happening this week in Delhi. This week and next week in Delhi, we all know there are thousands of tourists coming into Delhi, arguably for business reasons, both from within India and from outside of India. And I think, if you look at any sort of large-scale event like this, and this has all been planned, right, for the last several months, etc. I think what would have been great is if we had anticipated all that demand coming in, and we could have added a ton of new supply into the city, right, in terms of temporary accommodation, by incentivizing new accommodation, short-term homestays or alternative accommodation providers, give them tax breaks, allow them to list their homes very quickly on platforms, even if it is for a short period of time, so that you're distributing traffic evenly, you're ensuring that people are not paying crazy amounts, astronomical amounts for hotel rooms, and also plan the mobility around it, right? I know a lot of us have been stuck in jams coming to the venues. Our moderator herself was stuck in a jam coming in. There was a risk that this panel might not even happen. So I think therefore, vision, obviously I'm joking, but the point is, like, what can we do around, ensuring that there is better mobility in the city? What can we ensure that, how can we ensure that the emissions are not going through the roof this week and next week in Delhi? As it is, it's a polluted city. We're facing challenges with AQI, right? But anyway, I'm ranting a little bit, but the point is, I think this vision is super important coming in from a public perspective. And then for private organizations, this is where we can come in to ensure that, once that vision is set, we are able to help execute it. And for us as a platform, the way we kind of think about this is, to answer your question now, there are 2 or 3 things that we are doing, right? Especially when it comes to hospitality. One is what I alluded to a little bit earlier, where we are helping solve the problem of discoverability. We are also giving visibility to a lot of our partners, right? For them to be able to showcase all of their efforts and offerings in the sustainability area. Second is we have tied up with the UN. So we are offering tourism sustainability specific courses which are free of cost to all our partners all over the world. And these are very basic courses, yeah. These are not like super technical in nature, because at the end of the day, we think that change starts with a very small step. Because, a lot of accommodation providers, and that's the difference always, right, between aviation space and accommodation space. Aviation today, you've got 300 companies, you've got 300 airlines. Accommodation, you've got millions and millions of listings, right? You've got roughly, like even just on our platform, we've got 29 million listings globally, right? So therefore, when you think about a structure like this, which is already existing, how do you suddenly now bring in sustainability into the structure, right? There are things that you can already do within the existing structure that does not require you to tear it down entirely and then start from scratch, right? You can start to do things around food and waste management. You can start to do things around, removing single-use plastic and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, we still see plastic bottles here, right? So stuff like that, should be a no-go, yeah? And we should demand it as well when we come to events like these. So what we say is change starts at a very simple step. So start there, get the basics right before you think about broader, longer-term initiatives, because even when Gaurav was talking, which was very correct, which is all of these things have to have very long-term vision. But unfortunately, the reality is, as businesses, we're all living day to day, right? It's day-to-day survival. It is day-to-day. You look at the business case and you will do what's best for you, in the next quarter or the remaining part of the year. You're not thinking 10, 20, 30 years from now. It's very rare, and especially if you're a small business. So therefore, these courses are a way for us to educate our partners. We are also doing skilling and training sessions with certain state governments, Like for example, we have done it with Kerala, we've done it with Uttarakhand, etc., which is where the community tourism is very interesting because like, you'll have a small community of homestays coming together and we are educating them on how can you, one is how can you improve customer service overall, but also how can you be more sustainable in your operations. So that's our way of, how do we collaborate with governments and kind of give back to a lot of hospitality-based providers.
I'll come back to the experience part, that everyone wants experience. Don't you think they need to move away from being experienced and just not a buffet breakfast, which a lot of people don't want? Nikhil, you want to add on to this?
No, I have to say that when the pandemic happened, one of the trends that everyone said is that buffet is going to go away and nobody is going to go back to the buffet. And I can tell you, globally, every breakfast where buffet happens, you will always see lines. It's that greed, I guess, because
Yes.
because we need to be more sustainable. We need to start thinking a la carte and not buffet. So that needs to come in.
Or extend the buffet for a full day. Anytime I can claim it. That's what needs to come in for sure. A person like me who never eats buffet needs to subsidize my cost somehow. So that's sustainability too. So good. It was nice to hear everyone talk about hospitality, inbound and outbound. But as we now move forward, because of course it's two sides of the same coin, we'll move on to digital platforms, though we've spoken a lot about it, but I'll get more specific about it on these questions. So Santosh, as you ended, we'll start there only. So what do you feel the travel demand evolves towards sustainability? And that's what I just said. And experiential travel. So how can platform like yours use technology and data to influence choices and measure impact at the destination level? Because that's exactly what I started off with, that I don't need a buffet and I don't need some parts of my travel merging with the demands of other travelers. So how do we really differentiate between that?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll try answering it with a very specific scenario, right? Which can probably help illustrate this on how data and personalization can come in. One of the recent announcements actually that Goa Tourism made is around the Ekadash Tirtha, which is, this is a temple trail. I think it's about 11 temples, if I'm correct, spread across Goa, where you can sort of have a circuit, right? As a traveler, as a tourist coming into Goa. Now, the problem statement is that even in a platform like us, I think we are no different, is now unfortunately when people think Goa, automatically you kind of gravitate toward the coastal hotspots, right? So again, it's that sort of, one is that perception, but also the way the algorithms are built today is automatically when you will search, that is what is going to show up, right? And automatically all of the tourism traffic is also diverted there, right? Now where I think data will help, where even AI will help to a large extent is, now let's say we were able to solve this problem using geospatial technology. We are able to kind of map the tourism, the temple circuit, the temple trail, and we're able to divert travelers away so that is the first thing that they see when they search in a certain geography, right? That will start to nudge travelers more toward looking at these kind of options. Second is, if there is a way to also bring in the providers who are located there, right? It could be homestays, it could be local communities, etc. If there is a way to bring them in, because that helps to ensure that more of the spending that's happening is in those local communities, it's in those villages, right? And that's where we are able to divert a lot of the traffic accordingly. That's one way that I think data can be used. The other thing is AI in general is now giving us an ability to hyper-personalize, right? Because previously, even as a mass platform for us, it's always been a challenge, right? How do you cater to individual preferences? How do you cater to individual tastes or individual journeys that happen? But the power that AI has is now you can do that at a one-to-one level with personalization, right? And that's where I think this is all evolving toward, right? So I hope that answers.
Thank you so much. I think it does answer, but I'll take this to Nikhil going forward. Nikhil, Radisson, I'd like you to give me an example where Radisson actually is operationalizing sustainability more, and I would say moving from energy management to guest management. How would you do that, And like, we all talk about towels, one use, double use, triple use. So, I mean, how are you really going to manage that, and how do you think sustainability is going to come into place?
So linen will always be a challenge, and it's more awareness. And the the oxymoron is to make the customer aware or the guest aware. We actually have a way we can say single-use recycled paper, but the paper is actually telling you about how you can be more effective by using the towel once, or if you don't want your linen changed. We're calling it by different names: green housekeeping, light housekeeping. Um, in Europe, it's incentivized because there's a manpower challenge there. In India, that's not such a big issue. Uh, but I think you are seeing that change happening. 5 years ago, you didn't see customers actually saying, don't service my room for towels and linen. If I'm staying for 2 nights, I'm okay with the same bed sheet. Don't change my bed sheet. So that change has already happened. And you see that more not only in metro cities, but you're also seeing that change in tier 2, tier 3 cities, which is very heartening to see.
Okay, but what about energy management and guest thing? Do you also do something?
So yeah, I mean we're
Yeah,
doing a lot.
that's what I wanted to hear from Radisson's point of view.
I was trying to keep it generic, but at Radisson we are extremely focused on let's just say sustainability as a business pillar and not as a nice to have. So we have a net zero hotel actually from an India context in Bangalore, and we are moving forward on other things on similar concepts in Maharashtra at the moment. So Karnataka, Maharashtra for us are two states which lead this initiative. And because you need a little bit of policy to help you with that, it's extremely important for that to happen. I know the bell's gone off, but...
I think there's time. We
Okay.
started late.
Okay, so that's why I was initially talking about policy, because policy is important for access to energy. And that's an extremely critical part, which we are currently missing. Of course, infrastructure status is extremely important, because then electricity costs come down, and so on and so forth. All this will help in making us more sustainable.
Yeah, I think that's great thought, and I think it should happen. But I'll also like to add on what both Santosh and Gaurav had put in, that we need to incentivize. So do you think you could incentivize your costing of your rooms as per the use of consumption of all this? Okay, I use my towel only once, so I'll get a better rate or I'll get a worse rate than someone who uses it 10 times, or who puts on the lights and the television when he's walking out. Can we do that to incentivize people?
I don't know if AI will be the answer to that, but at the moment, I don't think so.
Okay. So that was at a lighter note, because everyone talks about incentivization. So how do we really incentivize? But let's move to Gaurav as we have the bell ringing. So Gaurav, from a domestic positioning lens now, how can India leverage digital platforms to manage demand and reduce over-tourism? I know we touched on it, but can we get more specific on saying, is regulation again a part of it? Do we need to tell people in big, bold words, no, you can't come in, or no, you can't go there? How do we really educate the traveler to say, hey, you can't keep going to that place when it's already over with tourism?
I think there are two aspects to it. One, I think we have to acknowledge that people go to the same destinations again because we have limited options, right? So we need to start.
Even after those 50 destinations?
I think it's a journey, right? It's a journey. So we do need to develop newer destinations, and which is a responsibility of the government and the industry and the hotels to really nurture new destinations and build enough infrastructure around that. I think second is a data problem. Like, nobody wants to get stuck on that Chandigarh-Shimla highway every summer and then be part of that big news item that, there was a 12-hour jam. We do need to use data, and there is enough data now, and there is enough technology now to be able to do real-time monitoring and say, look, this place is going to get flooded now. At this point, you have to stop. And we do not disseminate it enough. So this is an easy one to solve because this technology is not expensive. And I think there is willingness for people to also say that we will plan, right? Nobody enjoys getting stuck, right? So people, if the data was more real time, if it was that, yes, there has been snowfall, but you're now already too late because it's already crowded, right? So stop. I think that is important. That is really hygienic. That is at this point in time. And even I think private sector can enable a lot of it, because just using basic technology and basic CCTVs that are already on the, in the cities, and the fact that you have fast tags everywhere, right? You can easily start managing traffic. So those are lower hanging fruits. But I think the bigger challenge is that we need to build more infrastructure. We need to make more destinations discoverable. We need more flights going into into hill stations so that not everybody is traveling by road. Even if traveling by road is more sustainable, presumably more sustainable, but when your engine is on and you're stalling for 4 hours, you're actually probably spending more, your carbon footprint is pretty high. So I think that is key. Unless we build infrastructure out and we build options out, there is no way to tell people to not go to the destinations that they want to go to.
Okay, I have another thought on that, because I think more than stopping it, I think it's more on education on platforms like yours, with Booking that you should be saying this is overcrowded, you should not be going here, it's not good for your health. And I think that booking system should come into place more than we trying to educate them because I think India has a huge infrastructure now, and I think every state has got some USPs and some way, and people are looking at experiential travel today. So experiential travel just doesn't mean that you're loitering the mall road of Shimla and just enjoying yourself. So there's too much of experiential tourism happening, and I think and I can't stay away from saying my point, because I think that's all what tourism is about. So we quickly wrap it up, because I think we will be running out of time by the time we finish, and so we'll just do a quick rapid fire and let's see how we can do that. So we'll start from Gaurav, as he was the last one to speak. So if you had a magic wand, which single policy change would you make tomorrow?
I would spend 2% of the budget on tourism.
Wishful thinking. I endorse you totally. I'll say that loudly. Yes, we should. Okay, one more. One global destination India should emulate for regenerative leadership. And please don't say Mars, because Elon Musk is not here today.
I think we should look at the Southeast Asian countries. For example, Thailand and Indonesia do it very well.
Yeah.
And it is very holistic in the sense that it is part of their cultural ethos, just like it is for us. And they have incorporated all of those habits and practices into their tourism landscape as well. So that works very seamlessly.
Okay,
For me, it will be Bhutan. Huh?
Yeah, it could be. It's a happy country. So, okay, Santosh, if you could redesign the booking journey, what's the one sustainability cue you'd add? It's fun.
Maybe it could be about calculating the total carbon footprint in your entire journey, right?
Okay.
From start to finish.
And you could put that on your booking.com.
If there's some way to do that, yes.
That's a good thought. Okay, one tech disruption that will most impact tourism sustainability by 2030?
That's not rapid fire.
It's not flying taxis for sure. It's not flying taxis for sure. Not yet.
I mean, look, honestly, I don't know. I mean, it's like I don't have a crystal ball, right? It's hard to say.
Let's make it like a wish. What would it be?
Teleportation? I don't know.
That'd be lovely. That would be awesome, actually. I would love to go back and go front. Okay, Nikhil, luxury or sustainability? If you had one pick to win over guests, which would win?
Sustainability.
Are you sure?
Yeah. You have to give back, and you have to.
No, are you
leave it
saying
in a
it
better
because
place.
of the audience here?
No. I mean, I have 2 kids. I have to leave the world a better place than what we found it in, right? So sustainability anyway.
Okay, sure. Okay, one hotel innovation that will redefine sustainable hospitality in the next decade.
In the next decade.
What do you think? That something you're thinking about and you feel it should happen?
On sustainability, I mean, if we can start making meetings carbon neutral, large events carbon neutral in the next 3 years in this country, that will be phenomenal.
That's a great answer. So one thing if you could just add, because you are dealing with us as THSC, one skill that you think should be there, as you're skilling with us so much, what is that one USP that we all need to carry forward? Because it's short of time, otherwise I would have liked to ask this question.
One skill that everyone should carry?
Should be skilled in.
Should be skilled in?
Hospitality and tourism.
I think soft touches and like I said, we are today an exporter of tourism. It's important to remember that when you are out of this country, you are an Indian and you are competing with other countries when it comes to hotels actually or countries choosing to give you even something as a visa. So that's soft skills is what I would say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I know we are running out of time. That's what we are told, though we are not, I think. But let me just put this one question, or maybe two questions from the audience. A quick, not very lengthy questions, but two questions. Anyone you'd like to address? Two. Anyone? Yeah, sure.
So, Santosh, first question to you is, you told about, I think I'm loud enough.
Sure, please.
You told about that sustainability percentage, right? So I'm the director for MSME Business Forum India, working very closely with Niti Aayog. Can I know the source of that data, please? The numbers. Because Niti Aayog says the sustainable tourism in India is much lower than 30%. You are showing it more than 60%. Can
Yes.
I know the source?
I was talking about intent, and this is a customer sentiment survey that we run
Okay.
every year,
Okay.
roughly
That's
with
your
about.
in-house survey.
It's in-house survey we run with our travelers, guests who book with us,
Okay.
or even non-guests of booking. Roughly, this is run with about 35,000 travelers
Across India, across geography.
across globally. Actually, India is a part of it as well.
Okay.
But this is very much intent-based. That's why my point was, intent versus reality is a little bit different.
Thank you. Gaurav, my question to you, you were very much particular about capex, about the cost that's coming in, because you're not very happy with the PLI or the subsidies. Why is the industry not going in for leasing when the funds are available? We've created alternate funds wherein you can get it, you can procure it, and your capex will be less as it is happening across. We've not seen the industry coming forward to use that, which is happening in Korea, which is happening in Singapore. Why not in India?
So are you talking about leasing existing
No, I'm saying
infrastructure? or-
I'm saying in order to upgrade your hotels, wherein you say that you're not ready to spend in your capex, you take. Why don't you lease those capex? The funds are available. The assets can be leased.
I think Nikhil is better.
Nikhil
equipped
would like to answer that
than
question.
I would.
Yeah.
I'll answer this. So for example, at Radisson, we even work with IFC, and even on the sustainability fund, they have a green fund, right, for hotels, building, and so on and so forth. To your point on leasing, the model is still nascent, and the profit margins in some cases are far higher than actually buying the high-end equipment and owning it in the long term. So that model is still in a maturing place at the moment, and we can take this offline because it's a long debate that we can have on this one. Happy to take this offline.
So great. Thank you all. And I think we said two questions, and that's anyone else, because only one person asked. So would anyone ask, or should I wrap it up? I think we are all done. So, okay, that's awesome. So I think you impressed everyone so much, all three of you, that no one has any questions to. So I think that says a lot for it. So I just say thank you all for being here. So let's just say that whatever we've heard today is India's tourism is the future, and we must build on responsibility, regeneration, and experience. That's what came out from everyone. So travelers today want journeys that are not only sustainable, but also deeply experiential, and that's what we also ended with. We want to all save the planet and immerse ourselves in authentic culture at the same time. But to deliver on this promise, and we all said that together, we must invest in skills and workforce development, from hospitality staff to community entrepreneurs, from digital operators to infrastructure managers. I think there's skilled people who will translate regenerative principles into everyday's life, and I say that very, very strongly. So our panel has shown us that safeguarding nature capital, empowering communities, enhancing well-being, innovating hospitality, advancing infrastructure, and skilling the workforce are not separate goals. They are interconnected levers that we need to bring all together. So if India succeeds, we won't just welcome millions of visitors, we'll inspire them, empower communities, and set the global benchmark for regenerative tourism. So let's ensure all sitting here in this room and whoever hears us that we need to build the India story, and going forward, it's not just about growth, but about legacy, leadership, skilling, and the lasting impact that we all are going to make. And the future starts now. So let's begin with that. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, Nikhil, Santosh, and Gaurav. Thank you, audience. Thank you so much.